The conference room smelled like stale coffee and panic sweat, that specific blend that usually meant someone was about to get fired in the Austin tech scene. I sat at the head of that polished mahogany table, hands flat on my MacBook Pro, watching Chelsea Morrison wave a laser pointer at my screen like she was conducting some corporate orchestra from hell. I wasn't nervous. After 22 years in this business, starting as a fresh-faced ex-Army communications specialist with nothing but a community college degree and a head full of determination, nervousness was for people who didn't know their systems inside and out. I'm Kyle Harrison, 47 years old, and for the past 6 years, I'd been the guy keeping Logiflow solutions running while everyone else worried about quarterly reports, team-building retreats, and whatever buzzword was trending on LinkedIn that week. Before that, I'd cut my teeth at 3 different startups, watched 2 of them fold because they prioritized flash over fundamentals, and learned that in this business, experience isn't just valuable, it's survival. Standing there in her designer blazer was Chelsea Morrison, 29 years old, fresh Stanford MBA with a smile that looked like it came from a corporate training manual. She was Roy Morrison's niece and had been Chief Innovation Officer for exactly 5 days. In those 5 days, she had managed to use digital transformation, synergy, and blockchain-enabled solutions in every single conversation, which should be a felony in at least 12 states. "Kyle," she said, pointing that red laser dot at my architecture diagram like it was personally offending her. "I'm looking at this Node 7 optimization module, and honestly, it screams legacy bloat. We need to streamline for the data core acquisition. Think lean, think agile, think future-ready." The room went dead quiet. My team, 8 solid engineers who knew their stuff, stared at their laptops like they were praying to the coding gods. They knew Node 7 wasn't bloat. It was the load balancing engine that kept our platform handling 15,000 concurrent requests without melting down like a server farm in a Texas summer. You don't look at a Ferrari engine and call it cluttered just because you can't identify the carburetor. "It's not bloat, Chelsea," I said, keeping my voice level the way you do when explaining explosives to someone holding a lit match. "It's the latency reduction protocol, bypasses legacy. SQL queries, routes directly through cache memory layer, improves throughput by 15%. You remove it and API response time jumps from 75 milliseconds to 4 seconds. She laughed, that wet, condescending sound that young executives make when they think they're smarter than everyone in the room combined. 4 seconds? Kyle, users wait longer for their coffee to brew. "Look, I'm CIO now. Uncle Roy put me here to modernize this company for acquisition. DataCore Technologies wants lean, agile architecture, not some relic from the dial-up era. The dial-up era. I'd built that relic 3 years ago using cutting-edge distributed caching algorithms. But explaining that to Chelsea would be like explaining quantum physics to a goldfish." She walked over to the development console that was mirrored on the big screen, her heels clicking like a countdown timer. My stomach tightened. She had admin access. I told Roy, her Uncle Roy, that giving her admin access was like handing a loaded weapon to someone who'd never seen a gun. But Roy just patted my shoulder with that paternal smile and said she needed to feel empowered to drive change. "Kyle, we don't need this legacy back-end voodoo," Chelsea announced to the room like she was delivering a TED Talk. "We need clean, modern, cloud-native solutions." "Chelsea," I said, standing up slowly, the way you stand when you see someone about to step into traffic. "Don't touch that repository." "I'm cleaning house," she smirked, her finger hovering over the mouse. "This is what digital transformation looks like in practice." She highlighted the Node 7 directory, the entire module, 3 years of optimization work, the core logic that handled our data migration system for enterprise clients, the foundation that everything else was built on. "Chelsea, if you delete that, the staging environment collapses," I warned, my voice dropping an octave. "We have auto-deploy enabled for tomorrow's demo with DataCore." "You worry too much, Kyle. That's your problem. You're stuck in legacy thinking. We need to move fast and break things." Move fast and break things. Facebook's old motto, back when they were a college startup, not a multi-billion-dollar corporation that had learned the hard way that some things shouldn't be broken. "You're about to break the entire platform," I said. "Trust the process," Chelsea said. Then, with a theatrical flourish that belonged in a bad Broadway play, she clicked delete. The screen flickered. She clicked commit, then push. The terminal scrolled green text for exactly 2.3 seconds, then stopped. "Done," she said, dusting off her hands like she'd just finished some manual labor. "Leaner already. I can feel the efficiency. The silence that followed wasn't just quiet. It was a vacuum, a black hole of sound where the collective intake of breath from 8 experienced engineers created its own weather system. Dale, my junior developer, a 26-year-old kid I'd personally trained from knowing nothing but HTML to understanding distributed systems, looked like someone had just shot his dog in front of him. He stared at me with wide eyes, pleading for me to pull some miracle fix out of my back pocket. But I couldn't fix this. Not this time. Not in 30 minutes. Not in 30 hours. You just deleted the authentication layer, I said, sitting back down with a strange calm washing over me. It was the calm of a demolition expert watching carefully placed charges detonate exactly as calculated, even when those charges were set by an idiot. The application is now a front-end shell. Can't fetch data, can't authenticate users, can't process transactions. It's a zombie. Chelsea turned to me, her face reddening like a thermometer in August. See? This is exactly what I'm talking about. Negativity, resistance to change. You're toxic, Kyle. You're not a culture fit for the new Logiflow. She puffed out her chest like a bantam rooster. You're fired. Get your stuff and be out before the sprint review ends. The room actually gasped. Dale stood up so fast his chair rolled backward. Sit down, Dale, Chelsea barked. Or you're next. I looked at Chelsea. Looked at the screen where 6 years of my work used to be. Looked at my team, who looked like they were watching their own execution. Then my phone buzzed on the table. It had been buzzing for weeks. Blocked number, always at inconvenient times. I knew who it was. I'd ignored it because I was loyal. Loyal to Roy Morrison, who gave me a shot 6 years ago when I was just another ex-military guy with a community college degree and a reputation for fixing what other people broke. Loyal to the code I'd built. Loyal to the team that depended on me. But loyalty is a two-way street, and I was apparently the only one driving on it. I picked up the phone. This time the caller ID wasn't blocked. It just said DataCore Technologies. Chelsea was still talking, rambling about fresh perspectives and rockstar ninjas and paradigm shifts. She thought she'd crushed me. She was waiting for the tears, the begging, the desperate pleas, I need this job. 22 years in this business teaches you that when someone shows you who they really are, you believe them the first time. I swiped right. This is Kyle, I said, my voice carrying across the conference room like I was announcing the weather. The voice on the other end was smooth, professional, with just a hint of urgency. Brett Thornfield, VP of Engineering at DataCore Technologies, the very company that was supposed to acquire Logiflow for $180 million next week. Kyle, Brett said, and I could hear him leaning forward in whatever expensive chair he was sitting in. We haven't heard back from you regarding our offer. We're finalizing due diligence on Logiflow tomorrow. Honestly, looking at their architecture documentation, you're the only reason we're still interested. The rest of it looks like amateur hour. I looked at Chelsea. She was smirking, arms crossed, probably thinking this was some recruiter calling about extending my car warranty. Yes, I said into the phone, loud enough for everyone in that glass-walled room to hear. I accept DataCore's offer. Chelsea's smirk died like a Windows 95 computer. I can start immediately, I continued, watching her face cycle through confusion, then understanding, then panic. Actually, I'm free right now. My schedule just cleared up unexpectedly. Brett paused on the line. Even through the phone, I could hear him processing this. That's fast. Everything okay on your end? Everything's perfect, I said, locking eyes with Roy Morrison's niece. I'll see you in an hour. I hung up, closed my MacBook with the kind of deliberate care you use when handling something expensive, stood up and unplugged my charger, the cord retracting with a satisfying zip. Good luck with the deploy tomorrow, Chelsea, I said. Hope your digital transformation goes exactly as planned. I walked toward the door, my boots clicking on the polished concrete floor like a countdown timer. Behind me, Chelsea was shouting something about insubordination and security escorts, but I barely heard her. I was already doing the math in my head. Node 7 handled the authentication tokens for the entire platform. Without it, the admin panel would lock everyone out, including Chelsea, within 60 minutes when the session cache expired. She hadn't just fired me, she'd locked herself inside a burning building and thrown away the key. The walk from the conference room to my desk was less than 50 feet, but it felt like crossing the border between two different countries. The open office space of Logiflow hummed with the usual mid-afternoon energy that tech companies specialize in. Sales guys ringing gongs for closed deals, marketing people arguing about font kerning like it was a matter of national security, and the espresso machine in the break room screaming like a banshee every 3 minutes. None of them knew that the company was already dead. They were all walking around on a corpse that just hadn't started to smell yet. I reached my standing desk setup, 3 vertical monitors arranged like a mission control station, mechanical keyboard that sounded like rain on a tin roof, and a small cactus that I'd somehow managed to keep alive for 4 years despite my complete lack of botanical knowledge. I grabbed a cardboard box from the supply closet, one of those welcome to the team boxes they gave to new hires. The irony tasted like copper pennies in my mouth. I didn't take much. My personalized keycaps with their worn letters, my noise-canceling headphones that had survived 3 different companies, a framed photo of my German Shepherd Rex looking dignified in his Veterans Day bandana. I left the company hoodie hanging on my chair. Left the branded water bottle with the inspirational quote about disrupting the status quo. Left the 5-year service plaque made of cheap acrylic that was already starting to scratch. Kyle. I turned around. It was Glenn, our lead systems administrator, a pale, permanently caffeinated guy who looked like he lived in the server room and probably did on weekends. He was wearing a t-shirt that said, "There's no place like a 127.0.001, local host, the universal address that means home to anyone who's ever configured a network." Glenn was the only other person in the building who understood our infrastructure well enough to know what Chelsea had just done, mostly because he was the one who got woken up at 3 a.m. when things went sideways. Is it true? Glenn whispered, glancing nervously over his shoulder toward the glass-walled conference room where Chelsea was still gesticulating wildly at the whiteboard like she was trying to summon a demon. Did she actually delete the optimization module? "She didn't use the command line, Glenn," I said, dropping my stapler into the box with a satisfying thunk. "She used the GUI, point and click delete, then confirmed it with a dialog box. She thinks she's streamlining." Glenn lost what little color he had left. He looked like he'd just been told that Santa Claus was real and he was on the naughty list. But Kyle, the API gateway, the load balancers, they all rely on Node 7 to route traffic properly. Without the authentication layer, I checked my Apple Watch. Health checks will fail in about 7 minutes. Then the autoscaler will detect the failed instances and try to spin up new ones to compensate. But since the base Docker image pulls from the main branch, the one Chelsea just committed her improvements to, every new instance will spin up broken. "Infinite crash loop," Glenn whispered, and I could practically see the AWS billing calculator spinning in his head. "Yep, and AWS is going to charge us for thousands of instances spinning up, failing their health checks, getting terminated, and spinning up again every second, until someone with admin access manually intervenes." Glenn reached for his phone like a gunslinger. "I have to stop the deployment pipeline." "Don't," I said, my voice sharp enough to cut glass. Glenn stopped, his hand frozen halfway to his phone like he'd been caught stealing cookies. "What?" "She fired me, Glenn, explicitly. For obstruction. If you try to roll back her changes now, you're undermining the CIO's vision. You're obstructing her digital transformation." I leaned in close enough that only he could hear me. "And Glenn, you've got a mortgage and twins on the way. Don't give her an excuse." Glenn swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing like a fishing lure. He looked at the server status dashboard mounted on the wall, a massive display showing all our systems humming along with beautiful green lights. Green, green, green across the board. It was the calm before the red storm. So we just let it burn? "It's already burning, Glenn. We're just waiting for the smoke detectors to go off." I picked up my cardboard box of personal effects. "Do me a favor. Don't fix it. Not tonight. Let her see what lean and agile actually looks like." Glenn looked at me with a mixture of terror and something that might have been admiration. He nodded slowly. "I didn't see you leave. I was in the bathroom." Good man. The elevator ride down felt like slow-motion cinematography. As the doors closed, I caught a glimpse of Chelsea storming out of the conference room, clutching her laptop like a shield. She was looking around frantically, maybe for me, maybe for someone else to blame for whatever error messages were probably starting to pop up on her screen. Our eyes met through the narrowing gap of the steel doors. I didn't smile, didn't wave, didn't give her the satisfaction of any reaction at all. I just stood there holding my box of 6 years' worth of accumulated desk junk, watching her realize that she was about to be very, very alone with her digital transformation. The doors closed with a soft thump. The descent was the most peaceful sound I'd heard in months. Outside, the Austin heat hit me like opening an oven door. September in Texas, still pushing 95 degrees at 3 in the afternoon. I took a deep breath of hot air that smelled like barbecue smoke and car exhaust instead of stale coffee and fear. I called a rideshare. "Where to?" the driver asked, a guy in his 60s wearing a University of Texas cap. "Datacorp building downtown. The big glass tower on Congress. Fancy," he said, pulling into traffic. "You work there?" As of about 10 minutes ago, yeah. The ride gave me time to think. 22 years in this industry had taught me that there are two kinds of people: builders and destroyers. Builders understand that every line of code is connected to every other line, that systems are ecosystems, that you don't just delete things because you don't immediately understand their purpose. Destroyers think complexity is always bad, that legacy is a dirty word, that moving fast is more important than not breaking things. Chelsea was a destroyer, and she'd just destroyed herself. My phone started buzzing with notifications, Slack messages, even though I was technically fired. Apparently Chelsea hadn't revoked my access yet. 3:47 p.m. Dale. "Kyle, something's wrong with the health checks. API Gateway is throwing 502s. 3:52 p.m. Lisa, QA. User authentication is completely broken. Can't log into staging at all. 3:55 p.m. Glenn, AWS billing alert. Instance count spiking. This is bad. I turned off the notifications. Not my circus anymore." Datacorp Technologies occupied floors 30 through 40 of a gleaming tower that probably cost more to build than Logiflow's entire valuation. The lobby was all marble and steel, with a waterfall cascading down one wall that was clearly designed by someone who wanted everyone to know exactly how much money they had. "Kyle Harrison for Brett Thornfield," I told the receptionist, a professional-looking woman in her 40s who didn't bat an eye at my cardboard box of personal belongings. "Mr. Thornfield is expecting you. Executive floor, elevator bank B." The elevator was smooth and fast enough that my ears popped when it stopped. The doors opened to reveal Brett Thornfield waiting for me. Dark jeans, black sweater, and an expression that suggested he'd been looking forward to this conversation. "Kyle," he said, extending his hand. "I have to say, I didn't expect you to be quite so prompt when you said immediately." "I believe in efficient routing," I said, shaking his hand with a firm grip. "My previous path had a significant blockage." He chuckled and gestured toward a seating area that overlooked downtown Austin. The view was expensive. You could see Lady Bird Lake stretching toward the hills, office buildings reflecting the afternoon sun like mirrors. "Coffee? Water? Something stronger?" "It's after 4. Water's fine. I want to keep a clear head for whatever comes next." We sat in leather chairs that probably cost more than most people's cars. I set my box on the floor beside me. "Let's skip the corporate dance," Brett said, leaning back with the casual confidence of someone who'd never had to worry about rent. "We've been trying to acquire Logiflow for 8 months. Our due diligence reports kept coming back with red flags. Their front-end code is spaghetti. Their sales projections are optimistic fiction. Their user retention numbers don't add up. But every time our engineers dug into the back-end infrastructure, the API performance, the database architecture, the security protocols, it was pristine." He looked at me with the kind of intensity that venture capitalists probably practiced in mirrors. "That was you, wasn't it? Me and my team. Mostly the distributed architecture I designed 3 years ago when the founders kept ignoring scalability warnings." "And now you're here," Brett said, saying you're immediately available, which suggests something interesting happened at Logiflow in the last hour. Chelsea Morrison, that's Roy's niece, their new CIO, decided to modernize the code base this afternoon. She deleted the Node 7 optimization module from production. Then she fired me for trying to explain why that was a catastrophically bad idea. Brett's eyebrows went up, but he didn't look shocked. He looked like a poker player who'd just seen his opponent go all in with a bad hand. "So if we were to complete our acquisition of Logiflow tomorrow as planned, we'd be buying what exactly?" "A front-end interface that displays pretty error messages," I said, taking a sip of the sparkling water that had materialized on the side table. "The data's technically still there in the databases, but the authentication engine, the load balancing logic, the caching layer, all gone. I'm the only one who knows how to rebuild it quickly, and even I would need months to reverse engineer it from scratch." "And the documentation?" Chelsea doesn't believe in documentation, called it legacy bloat that slows down innovation. Brett smiled, and it was genuine this time. The kind of smile you see on someone's face right before they make a very profitable decision. "Kyle, I'm going to be completely honest with you. We don't actually want Logiflow. We don't care about their brand, their customer list, or their logistics application. We wanted the underlying technology to power our new fintech platform." He pulled out a tablet and slid it across the coffee table. This is Project Catalyst. It's what we've been planning to use Logiflow's infrastructure for. Since that infrastructure is currently, how did you put it, displaying error messages? Why don't we just build it from scratch with the engineer who designed the original? I looked at the tablet. The schematic showed a high-frequency trading platform that needed three things: speed, security, and reliability. Everything I'd spent 6 years building for a company that shipped boxes now applied to a system that would move millions of dollars in microseconds. You want me to rebuild it? Better, Brett said, leaning forward. I want you to be head of architecture for Project Catalyst, equity partner. Triple your Logiflow salary, team of your choosing, and complete technical autonomy. No founder relatives, no MBAs telling you to delete load-bearing code. I could see the architecture in my head already. Clean slate. No legacy debt. No quick fixes bolted onto systems that were never designed to handle them. Just pure engineering. What happens to the Logiflow acquisition? Brett tapped the glass table with one finger. We have a material adverse change clause in our letter of intent. If the target company's core technology is significantly degraded during the due diligence period, we can walk away without penalty. He looked at me with the expression of someone about to ask a very important question. Would you say Logiflow's technology has been significantly degraded? I thought about the error logs that were probably flooding every monitor in their office right now. I thought about Glenn sweating in the server room. I thought about Chelsea staring at screens full of red text that she couldn't read, much less understand. I'd say Logiflow's technology is non-existent. Then we walk, and we build Catalyst. I had one condition. I want to hire 4 people from Logiflow once the dust settles. My junior developer Dale, Glenn the sysadmin, Lisa from QA, and Scott from DevOps. Done. Welcome to DataCore, Kyle. We shook hands, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Genuine excitement about going to work. The first week at DataCore was like stepping out of a heavy metal concert into a library. No one screamed at meetings. No one used disruption as a verb. Code reviews were thorough but focused on the actual code, not office politics. When I requested a Rust-based development stack, something I'd been begging Logiflow to adopt for 3 years, it was approved in one email. 3 words. Sounds good. Proceed. Meanwhile, my phone became a real-time documentary of corporate collapse. I hadn't blocked my former teammates. I needed to know they were okay, and honestly, a dark part of me needed to witness the aftermath. Tuesday, 11:23 p.m. Dale. Autoscaler hit 22K in AWS overages today. Chelsea's screaming that Amazon is trying to bankrupt us. She tried to edit the Kubernetes config in Microsoft Word. Word, Kyle. Wednesday, 3:18 a.m. Glenn. Haven't slept in 48 hours. Every fix we apply breaks something else. Chelsea asked me why we can't just Control-Z the internet. I think she's having a breakdown. Thursday, 8:45 p.m. Lisa. They're hard-coding everything now, Kyle. For the DataCore demo tomorrow, they're serving static JSON files. It's pure theater. If DataCore clicks on anything that requires real data, the whole facade collapses. I forwarded that message to Brett with a simple note. Suggest asking them to filter results by date range during the demo. Brett replied immediately. Noted. This should be interesting. Friday arrived with the kind of gray Austin morning that makes you appreciate air conditioning. I was deep in code, building Catalyst's authentication microservice, when my second monitor lit up with messages from a group chat I'd named Lifeboat. 10:12 a.m. Lisa. DataCore team just arrived. 3 suits, 2 lawyers, 1 guy with a laptop who looks like he actually knows code. Chelsea's sweating through her blazer already. 10:18 a.m. Dale. Demo starting. Roy's doing the intro speech about resilience in the face of technological evolution. Chelsea's setting up the projector. Her hands are shaking so bad she can't connect the HDMI. I imagined that conference room, the same one where I'd been fired a week ago. The ghosts of my deleted code haunting every pixel on that screen. 10:25 a.m. Glenn. Chelsea's driving the demo, clicking through the dashboard. Look how fast our optimized system loads. Yeah, because it's loading a CSV file from the desktop. 10:32 a.m. Lisa. DataCore VP just asked a question. Can we see the logistics throughput metrics for Q2? Chelsea's face just went white. 10:33 a.m. Dale. Chelsea. We focus on real-time analytics, so historical data is archived in our cloud optimization layer for performance reasons. 10:35 a.m. Glenn, DataCore guy. Please unarchive it then. We need to validate the data integrity before finalizing acquisition. This was the moment, the kill shot. There was no archive. There was no cloud optimization layer, there was no data integrity to validate because there was no system to validate it with. 10:38 a.m. Lisa. Chelsea's typing frantically. She's trying to edit the JSON file live, in front of them. Oh my god. 10:39 a.m. Dale. Error 500. Giant red error box on the projector screen. Undefined is not a function. Chelsea's shouting at the laptop like it personally betrayed her. 10:42 a.m. Glenn. Datacore lawyer just stood up. This application isn't making any network requests. We're monitoring your traffic. This is a static web page pretending to be a platform. I could feel the air being sucked out of that room from 15 miles away. The fraud was exposed. They weren't just selling a broken car, they were trying to sell a cardboard cutout of a car. 10:45 a.m. Lisa. It's over. Datacore team packed up without saying goodbye. Roy looks like he's having chest pains. Chelsea's staring at the wall like she's seeing ghosts. 10:47 a.m. Dale. Roy just turned to Chelsea. Where's the backup? Where's Kyle's code? Chelsea. I told you, Uncle Roy, I streamlined it. I think she's about to cry. I closed the chat and went back to writing clean, beautiful code that would actually work. Brett appeared in my office doorway an hour later. We formally withdrew our offer. Legal's drafting a breach of good faith notice. They wasted 6 months of our time with what amounts to fraud. And the technology? Worthless. Without your architecture, it's just expensive spaghetti and a nice UI theme. 3 months later, Project Catalyst launched at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday. I stood in Datacore's Mission Control Center surrounded by my team, Dale monitoring front-end performance, Glenn watching infrastructure metrics, Lisa tracking quality assurance, Scott managing the deployment pipeline, all of them refugees from the Logiflow disaster, now building something that actually mattered. Traffic nominal, Dale reported, grinning. Global Freight Partners just went live. 0 issues. Global Freight Partners. Logiflow's former biggest client, who jumped ship the moment they heard about the technical meltdown. Latency holding at 12 milliseconds, Glenn called out. Load balancers are barely working. 0 defects, Lisa announced. Systems running clean. As the Austin sunrise painted the downtown skyline orange and pink, I realized something had changed in me. The anger that had driven me out of Logiflow, the cold fury that had sustained me through the transition, it was gone. I wasn't the wronged employee anymore. I was just an engineer who'd built something that worked, surrounded by people who understood that craftsmanship matters. My phone buzzed with a LinkedIn notification. Chelsea Morrison viewed your profile. I smiled and didn't look back. Let her see the title, Head of Architecture, Datacore Technologies. Let her see what she'd deleted. Let her see what happens when you confuse motion with progress, change with improvement, disruption with destruction. Sometimes the best revenge isn't dramatic. Sometimes it's just building something better while watching incompetence collapse under its own weight. In this business, there are builders and destroyers. I know which one I am, and I know which one lasts.